So that's the sort of second level up, but it's not until they get to sort of 3 to 6 years old that they get into something called the conceptual self, and part of that emergence of the conceptual self is a sense of identity. So it's what you would know as consciousness, is they start to become aware, not only that they're physically, emotionally separate, but they've got an identity. And it sort of blossoms between 3 and 6 years old, and one of the things that happens in the emergence of the conceptual self is language. So language is essentially a concept, it's a noise to represent something. So the emergence of the conceptual self happens, and we start to label our universe. You know, cat, dog, bat, ball, window, floor, and so on. And so the world starts to make sense, and we start to be able to navigate. And children between the age of 3 and 6 learn about 6 new words every single day. So there's this phenomenal language acquisition that goes on. But it's not until they get to the 4th level, which is called concrete consciousness, that they start to learn the rules that govern the concepts. So that's when it all starts to make sense. Why is a dog and a cat a cat? Why is a mummy and a daddy a daddy? What's the rule? And it's in that between sort of 6 and 9 years old that the fun starts to happen. So if you speak to a 7-year-old, you can start to have fun by playing against the rules. You know, look at that cat going woof woof. No. Cats go meow. They don't go woof woof. Right? And then it makes them laugh, because you're basically playing against the rules. So there's this whole rule emergence that occurs in a child between 6 and 9. And then that's where most people stay. So most of the people you're going to meet in your life, 20, 30, 40, on the inside, 9. Right. See this in companies all the time, toys out of the pram, behaving like children. It's very common. Now there is an attempt, usually in the early teenage years, to get beyond that concrete self, to get beyond the rules, which is why you get teenage conflict. You know, you'll see it, and parents try to suppress this, like it's a bad thing. It's a developmental stage, you shouldn't be suppressing this stuff. They're testing the rules. So there's this battle ensues. You told me to be home at 10, I want to be home at 11. You told me to be honest, you're not being on it, and the whole kind of fight breaks out. And they have the whole turbulent teenage years. Now, regardless of who wins that battle, whether it's mum or dad or the child, it sort of bobbles along for a few years. Now, eventually, regardless of who wins the battle, they leave home, hopefully. There you go, right? So regardless, but then a much bigger parent called society comes in and imposes its rules. So a lot of people go back into the concrete. You know, they're not in the transversal anywhere, they're back in the concrete following a set of rules. So we start to believe that we've got to get a degree, we've got to get a job, we've got to get a relationship, we've got to get a car, we've got to get a house, we've got to get all these things to be a good corporate citizen. So we start to follow the rules. And we enter a company and we start to work our way up the career ladder, following the rules. And so a lot of people you'll encounter are back in that concrete. Their life becomes stereotypical. And you'll see people talk about this. No, that's not how we do things at this company. You be the chief executive, I'll be the chief financial officer. That's how we do it around here. It's a set of rules that we're all following. And we're often not even aware of those rules. And that will often happen for the rest of your life. You don't even realise you're running the rules. And by the way, these are rules that weren't given to you with your permission. They were just imposed by parents or society. We're not even aware of it. If you're lucky, you have a crisis. At some point in your life, something terrible happens to get you to question the rules. Now remember, most people this never happens to, or if it does, it doesn't cause them to question. So that might be the loss of a loved one, the loss of a relationship, or something terrible happens, usually most commonly in midlife. And if you enter the stage, what we call the disease of meaning, is it starts to occur to you that there's something wrong with the picture of your life. I've been following all these rules, and it hasn't delivered. I thought if I was a good corporate citizen, and I got a good job and a good house and paid tax and all of that stuff, I would be happy and blissful forever. And I'm not. That's the disease of meaning. And that is real pain. If that happens in a religious context, people call it purgatory. I mean, literally there's hell on earth. So people get into this state, and often they lash out, they become unpleasant and negative and so on, because they're basically in pain. Now there are two strategies to that pain. First strategy, much loved by students, anesthetic. Because if I can blot out the meaning of life, that kind of existential question, if I'm wasted on a Friday night, I don't have to think about that question about what's the meaning of all this. It just goes away as a question. So then some people do this every night. Some people do it every weekend, getting wasted, either through alcohol and drugs. But the problem is, when the hangover wears off, the question returns. It's still there. And you can't answer it. So if you're smart, you realise anaesthetics won't help you. So you get into the second strategy, which is distraction. There are lots of different types of distraction. Now that distraction can simply, you become a gym buddy. Right? Let's pump some iron. Because while I'm feeling the burn, I don't have to think about the question. So I become the body beautiful, right? Stuck at the gym the whole time. Getting the kick on the endorphins and so on. So, but